Steven Universe Season 1 Episode 7 Bubble Buddies broadens the cast of characters to introduce Connie, Steven's love interest, voiced by Grace Rolek, a bespectacled South Asian book lover we previously only saw in the opening without context. It also increases Steven's power set from summoning a shield and mangling animal transformation to include summoning a pink bubble shield to surround him and allies on all sides. As an introductory episode to these two elements, it has a relatively simple plot. It focuses on Steven's emotional insecurity when interacting with his crush, and it uses his emotionally driven powers as a means of illustrating this. He summons a bubble shield by reflex when in danger to protect him and Connie, and can't turn it off until he confronts his insecurity head-on, leading to a series of misadventures where they get to know each other, similar to the "oops, we're handcuffed to each other" sitcom stock plot. Much later on, in Season 3 Episode 25 Bubbled, the episode's basic plot is reprised, with Steven getting trapped in a bubble with an enemy instead of a friend. But Bubble Buddies really takes things slow to properly explore the premise. The episode uses a non-standard plot format where important details Steven himself knows are kept from the viewer until the end of the second act, when he opens up to Connie. It works for the episode's entertainment value, but I'd like to summarize the story in a more linear fashion. Back in Season 1, Episode 1 Gem Glow, while we're distracted with cookie cats, we get a glimpse of a glowing ring in the freezer. This ring is a bracelet that Connie wore months ago during a Beach City parade. Greg's car wash got a parade float, and Steven rode it while dressed as a scrub brush. From there, he caught sight of Connie and was instantly attracted. He saw her drop her bracelet and tried to return it to her, but couldn't find her. He has been keeping it in the freezer to prolong its longevity in the hopes of being able to find her and give it back one day, like the prince with Cinderella's glass slipper. It's adorable. In Season 1 Episode 6 Cat Fingers, Lars mocks Steven for being lonely. What a jerk. But he's right. Steven is friendly with a number of people, including other kids like Petey and Onion. More on him in a moment. But he's not good friends with them, like he is with Sadie and Lars, who are too mature for him to really relate to until the time skip in the movie. Steven lacks close friends at his own maturity level. He needs someone like Connie. When the episode starts, Steven finds Connie again on the beach, reading Catcher in the Rye, an ode to angsty teens. He now has a perfect opportunity to introduce himself to his crush and return the bracelet, but is overcome by jitters and struggles. He first tries to impress her with a bike, casually riding by on the sand where no one would actually ride a bike, but chickens out and runs away. Connie watches, not put off, but not really engaged either. Meanwhile, the crystal gems muse about earthquakes happening with greater frequency, with no clear cause. We'll learn that it's a local monster, a giant worm that causes tremors. Get it? They become curious what Steven is up to. When they realize what's going on, Pearl offers to formally set up an interaction between the two of them, but Steven wants to approach Connie himself. He tells the crystal gems not to interfere or even watch, as he's nervous enough as is. Garnet is totally on board and directs the others to give him his space. At this point in the series, Garnet is pretty inscrutable, but we get a slight hint of her romantic nature here. She will show consistent enthusiasm for Steven and Connie's relationship throughout the whole series. Steven goes to introduce himself to Connie and, when a tremor hits, is able to make the best first impression ever by saving her from falling rocks. He demonstrates his bubble shield ability for the first time in an exaggerated floral motif, similar to his first summoning of Rose's shield and activation of Rose's light cannon. His mother is thematically with him as he moves forward with his life and engages in his first romantic interaction. It displays that interesting blend of traditionally feminine and masculine themes as he uses pink floral magic to impress a girl in a heterosexual romance. The show effectively communicates the idea that every gender expression is equally valid. Steven is an effective heterosexual male who surrounds himself with girly magic. We've seen this basic power before, when Garnet bubbled the centipedal gem in Gem Glow, and Pearl bubbled the living armor shards in Season 1 Episode 5 Frybo. We've seen Garnet's room filled with bubbled monster gems in Season 1, Episode 4, Together Breakfast, implying that the crystal gems have been doing this for a long time. However, the difference there is that they summon bubbles to contain bad guys. As part of a theme about using power responsibly, the crystal gems are more or less police officer figures, arresting monsters and taking them to a prison in the temple to keep people safe. This is in contrast to Imperial gems, who simply use their powers to dominate other people. But we won't learn about them until Season 1, Episode 36, Warp Tour. The crystal gems are better than American cops, but still fundamentally warriors who aggress and imprison with no desire to rehabilitate. This is the first time we've seen a bubble used as a shield, only to protect, and it showcases how Steven is better than the other gems for his nurturing inclinations, which will eventually lead him to reform the crystal gems into a rehabilitory force. The show alludes to these themes when Steven builds himself up to Connie as a member of a superhero team, and she connects what the crystal gems do to what her father does as a quote-unquote cop. She soon admits that she's exaggerating and explains that he's just private security, which elevates him in my mind. American cops are significantly inferior to the ideal cops of Norway and Sweden. Steven is insecure and doesn't admit that he's exaggerating his role as a crystal gem, a magic cop, and is unable to properly make friends with her because he remains closed off. This insecurity culminates in being unable to turn off his bubble shield, trapping them inside. They try to roll their hamster ball up to Steven's house to get help from the crystal gems, but are unable to beat the steep incline. As Garnet is being Steven's wingman and keeping Pearl and Amethyst from interfering, none of them are going to notice Steven and Connie are trapped for a long time. Whether or not Garnet is truly unaware is unclear. It's possible that she truly agreed not to pay attention and thereby didn't foresee this consequence, but it's also possible that she foresaw that her lack of interference would most likely produce a favorable outcome. Either way, it's nice that she shows him respect by not hovering when he wants his privacy. Connie suggests that they stay there and wait for the crystal gems to get worried enough to check on them, which is probably a good idea, but Steven is too eager to show off his competency as a superhero and tries various ways to pop the bubble. First, he takes them to the donut shop to get help from Sadie and Lars. Sadie tries to help, but Lars just acts like a jerk and teases Steven about being interested in a girl. The way that he does this is gross, making exaggerated French kisses on the side of the bubble. Before the show got overtly queer, this was the most controversial aspect of the show and was heavily censored in other countries. Because, the kids might realize that gross kissing exists. Like they don't get this from older siblings anyway. Connie takes Lars in stride, just viewing him as an oddity, and doesn't take personal offense. Sadie is unable to break the bubble by hitting it with a chair, so Steven looks for a harpoon gun on the docks. There he runs into Onion, a mute child who literally looks like an onion. We previously got a glimpse of him in a crowd scene in Laser Light Cannon, and now we sort of get a sense of the character as intelligent in certain areas, but seemingly neurodivergent and lacking certain senses of taboo behavior. We won't see how truly cold and violent he can be until Season 1, Episode 15, Onion Trade, but there are hints of it when he tries the harpoon gun solution and appears dryly amused when it bounces off the bubble and sinks a nearby boat. I am not an Onion fan. This kid creeps me out. Onion is the first hint of the show's fatal flaw in being too restrained when people are actively harmful. This will be expressed most overtly with White Diamond, but it's present on a smaller scale with Onion and Ronaldo, whose paranoid bigotry has yet to be made apparent. Onion might actually be a future serial killer, and he's treated with kid gloves. This harpoon thing is a warning sign. Restorative justice is a good ideal, but you must be able to actually address the problem. The writers get this with Lars, whose behavior is problematized and something that he ultimately matures from, but Onion's dangerous behavior is overlooked. Following the harpoon failure, Steven rolls them to the boardwalk to be hit by a roller coaster. Connie points out that this is an awful plan, but Steven has zero sense at this point and tries it anyway. The bubble is knocked through the air and crashes into the ocean, where it sinks like a rock. Judging from Steven's future faceted shield power, the bubble material is probably made of diamond and far too dense to break or float. By the way, did you see that boardwalk hot dog stand called Wiener in Hand that went by super fast? Yeah, not something that the kiddies would notice, but is an amusing joke for adults. On the bottom of the ocean, they catch sight of a giant worm with a gem in its mouth that eats bioluminescent seaweed. It causes a tremor, and they sink deeper into the ocean's depths, now in danger of suffocation if they can't get out, and drowning if they do. It's a bad place to be in, one that Steven later describes as contributing to his PTSD, and Connie finally loses her cool. She breaks down in tears and expresses her deep sadness born of isolation. Her book is thematic of the angst that she feels inside, and she opens up about her emotional reality, where she longs for companionship. She never actually viewed Steven as a possible friend because he never opened up to her. But he does now. He gives her back her bracelet and explains his honest attraction to her, finally letting go of his insecurity, and the bubble breaks. They swim up to the surface, but the glowing bracelet leads the worm right to them. The worm's design, while loosely based on the graboid from Tremors, is probably a sex symbol thematic of their hetero-romance. It has a phallic body with a yonic mouth, and it attacks the young lovers. I think the sexual subtext is intentional because we later see the worm take a humanoid form, and her gem is then in her crotch like a yonic symbol. The creators, the Crooniverse, made Steven Universe for adults as much as for children, and there are sex jokes all over the place that children would never pick up on. Steven does some quick thinking and uses the bracelet as bait to get the worm tangled up in a dock, which collapses and hits the worm. Its body disappears, leaving only its gem. Garnet bubbles it as a reminder of what the bubbles are typically used for, and the crystal gems roll as magic cops. The crystal gems make sure that Steven and Connie are alright, before Garnet chases away the others to not get in Steven's way as he romances her, inadvertently embarrassing him in front of his crush. The episode ends with hope for their relationship, and some foreshadowing of the magic cop's procedures being at odds with Steven's nurturing nature, which will be explored in Season 1, Episode 23, Monster Buddies. Bubble Buddies does a lot of world building in its 11-minute runtime, and still manages to be an entertaining episode in its own right. Connie is probably the most important side character in the series, eclipsing even Greg once Pearl starts training her as a protege in Season 2, Episode 6, Sworn to the Sword. And she is a progressive choice as a love interest. Interracial romances are still controversial even now, and the show does not mess around with its depiction. Connie is overtly a character of color with dark skin and a large nose, which are features not typically embraced by Western beauty standards. She is depicted as valid and desirable by the white protagonist without being fetishized. That is a hard line for many storytellers to walk, and with as much hate as the Crooniverse receive for their various racial slip-ups, I think it's worth acknowledging how well they nail that. I'm sure that Rebecca Sugar and Ian Jones-Quartey's similar interracial relationship helped influence its depiction. Connie is somewhat positioned at a distance as Steven tries to make friends with her, but she isn't kept at a distance. When she opens up to him, she is as much a character in the narrative as Petey is in Frybo, and is someone that lonely children in the audience can relate to. I do as a former lonely child, anyway. The show is really slow-paced at this point. Bubbled has similar elements while moving the series plot along leaps and bounds faster, but it is only able to do that because of the groundwork that early episodes do in establishing the characters and setting. Bubble Buddies solidly introduces both Connie as a character and Steven's bubble shield power, while building the series' themes about the crystal gems as a magic police force, and showing more of Beach City and its residents. Onion isn't very important to the series as a whole, but he is a recurring character, and an excuse to show how Connie is more intelligent than Steven is, in figuring out how to properly communicate with him, before he creeps me out. Next time, Steven is finally given his first real mission, and is somehow even less prepared for it than for his practice mission.